Hey guys, so today we're going to be talking about Song of Solomon, or Song of Songs, depending on who you ask. And it's a very difficult book to interpret. It has actually one of the most interpretations of any book in the Bible. And the three prominent views are that it is the pursuit of um, God and Israel, right? So God pursuing Israel throughout the Bible. In the Old Testament, that's a Jewish interpretation. And then the Christian equivalent of that is Christ pursuing the bride, the church, in the New Testament. And then you have the um, more scholarly view of recent centuries of the Messiah's pursuit of wisdom. And we can kind of read ourselves into that as us pursuing wisdom as well, especially within the genre of wisdom literature. This is all about us acquiring wisdom and learning to walk in God's ways. And then you also have the traditional view that's held by a lot of modern interpreters, which is that it is just simply romantic love poems that are written about a man pursuing his wife and vice versa. And so kind of have those three areas of God and man, or man and wisdom, or man and wife. And so I think that all three of these are, they're not necessarily in combat with each other, but they can be seen as coexistent in layers of the same story. And so I think, especially like in other books, such as the prophets and in Revelation as well, you see layers upon layers of meaning in what you're reading, and several interpretations that are true and do come about of the same exact passage. And so I don't think it's any different here, that there are several different layers of meaning to this text. And so regardless, you have the basic format of this woman and this man who they're both actually shepherds. So he's a shepherd and she's a shepherdess, and they're in love, obviously, and pursuing each other. And they have these different interactions where they get really close to each other, and then all of a sudden, this story just kind of resets. And so you first start out in chapter 2, they get really close to each other, and then she says, I adjure you, I adjure you, O daughters of Jerusalem, that you not stir up or awaken love until it pleases, right? And so this phrase is repeated 3 times throughout the book at different climaxes. And so you get the first section where you're getting introduced to the characters and they're really in love and they're getting really close to each other, and all of a sudden they're like, nope, can't do it yet. We cannot become one with each other. It's not time. And they make repeated references to the vineyard and to this garden, this place of delight and of fruitfulness, and it not being ripe yet. That they're walking in and they're observing it and they're seeing that it's not time yet to harvest the fruit. And so, being a metaphor for engaging in intercourse and consummation. And so, it's not yet time. So then, in the next part, it's kind of hard to interpret, but most modern scholars think that it's actually a dream sequence. So from like 3 to 5-ish chapters, she's actually asleep, and there's several different indications of that in the text. And in that dream, she has this scene where she is really close to her beloved, and she's about to go in and meet him in a romantic way, and all of a sudden, it ends and she says, once again, O daughters of Jerusalem, do not awaken a love until it's time, until it pleases. And so then you have the second climax that ends in, once again, it's not time yet. But then you have another section where it's in 5, 8, and 9, where basically she says that, I adjure you, daughters of Jerusalem, if you find my beloved, let him know that I'm here because I'm sick with love. And so she's basically saying, it's almost time. I'm ready, but I don't know where you are. I have to find you again. And so then at the end, you finally have them. They're together in chapter 7, and they're talking to each other and kind of just delighting in each other and describing the things that make the other so appealing. And then in chapter 8, you have this final buildup, and she once again says, I adjure you, O daughters of Jerusalem, that you do not stir up or awaken love until it pleases. But then she goes on and she says, who is this that comes Who is that coming up from the wilderness, leaning on her beloved? Under the apple tree I awakened you. There your mother was in labor with you. There she bore you. There she who bore you was in labor. And so it's finally happened. She has finally awakened her love and has awakened the one whom she loves. And they have embraced in marriage and are finally married and in love and able to fully express their love to one another and to bring out where it says, I think that I'm forgetting where it is, but basically it says that the old fruits and the new fruits, right? So the old delights of being in a dating and courtship engagement period, but then also the new delights of being married and falling in love and fulfilling just the role and desire of having a family as well. And so you have all of that together now at last. And so regardless of your perspective, whether you have one of the three or all the three or a couple of however it is or another one entirely, we see that this is ultimately a pursuit. And it's a pursuit that ends in finding the one that you're pursuing. And so as we read this, we find wisdom, right? And we find this greater desire to understand the depths of God's love, but also to realize that it takes time, right? And that there are layers of fruitfulness that come from pursuing the Lord, and we can't skip ahead to maybe what we think is the good part. We have to go through the periods of pursuing and of questioning and asking and longing and aching and then finding and delighting in ultimately. And same with whether we are pursuing a physical bride or groom. If we're looking for a spouse that, again, we can't skip to the end. And we were just watching a show last night where they did, and it broke apart because there's a natural pursuit process that God's ingrained in us that we are meant to find and but then to continue to explore and learn about and discover in a public setting who this person is that we're pursuing, and to ensure that they are the person that we should be pursuing, and then to finally then in private pursue each other further in marriage. And so then lastly, we have the pursuit of God and his people, of Christ and his bride. And this is the ultimate pursuit of marriage, right? The ultimate purpose of marriage is meant to be a demonstration of Christ's love for the church and his pursuit of her, and his final victory over sin and death that leads to peace and fruitfulness that lasts forever. And we see hints of this throughout all the several different sections of this book. It's always talking about fruit trees and gardens and vineyards and this king and this woman of beauty. And you also see elements of Eden in there's like gold and jewels and several different things that you find in Eden and in that environment that are kind of coming back to the forefront and bringing us back to this place, calling us back home to where God intended us to live, which is in Eden, but also now a beautiful, immaculate city that is both a garden and metropolis. And so once again, we see that this is a pursuit of several different things, but ultimately it is a pursuit of Christ and his church, his bride, who, if we believe in Christ and we've given our heart to him, just as he's given his heart to us, we can one day delight in the fullness of this expectation. But remembering too that, again, do not awaken love until it pleases, right? And so that we are still waiting for this, and this painful process that we're going through of waiting for this promise to be fulfilled is something that is beautiful and is hard, but it makes the end so much more worth it. And so I just encourage you guys, whatever you're going through, whatever trials you're facing, whatever temptation you have to jump to the end, don't take it, right? Because God is worth it. His bride, she is worth it. That's you. We are worth it to him, and he is willing to wait for us, so we should be willing to wait for him and with him.